All right, guys, welcome back to another Master and Apprentice video and podcast. As you guys can see from the title, we're going to be going over all of the Jedi that we know survived Order 66. Um, with a new upcoming skeleton crew in the trailer, we see there's a new Jedi who has obviously survived Order 66, right? To some certain extent. He's a Jedi. It's after the events of Order 66, so we can presume that at some point he survived that, or he wasn't a part of it, or whatever the case is. And I feel like this list has kind of always been growing. It just we find characters that are new brought to Star Wars universe that survived Order 66, or we find out later in other material that a character survived Order 66 that we may have presumed dead. So with all that being said, we're going to go over established characters that we know survived Order 66. And this is going to be maybe a little bit controversial, but established to me means in media on screen, right? Not books or comics. Mostly due to the fact that they change comics and books all the time, right? So with that being said, it's kind of hard to say that's an established thing. I mean, you can go over lots of different examples just in the last year or two where something was established in canon and lore in a book, like Asajj Ventress's death in the Dark Disciple book. Now in Bad Batch season 3, they bring her back. So just simple things like that, where they bring characters back, it's kind of hard to say are established in books and comics, and because they're just those aren't as well as known established facts. So it's kind of we're just going to try to ignore that for now. So we're going off of like video games, shows, and movies, and we'll reference some comics and books, but the main sources we're going off of is screen media. So with that being said, we're going to run down this list relatively quickly, going through all of the Jedi, and not Jedi anymore, but were Jedi at the time, and just a little bit about them.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, who dies in Zero BBY, as we see in A New Hope.
Next, we have Kelleran Beq. Kelleran Beq's one of those newer characters, really only seen once or twice in The Mandalorian season 3. We don't really know if he died or not. We can maybe assume because he seemed fairly older at the time. So by the time the sequels rolled around, he's probably not relevant or alive. But we do know he survived Order 66 because he saved Grogu.
Gungi, who was a Jedi youngling in the Clone Wars, was seen again in the Bad Batch after the events of Order 66, so obviously he survived that.
Then we have obviously Grogu. I mean, it's kind of hard to say this is a Jedi who survived because he wasn't really a Jedi, but technically he was part of the Jedi Temple and the Jedi Order. He was a Jedi youngling. But obviously he survived Order 66 because we see him in The Mandalorian, unlike we just talked about Kelleran Beq. And no death is confirmed for him either.
And then Kanan Jarrus, as we see, he survived from the very beginning of the series The Bad Batch. He then went on to die in the Rebels at the very last season.
Then we have Cal Kestis. He was a Jedi Padawan at the time of Order 66. His master, Jaro Tapal, sacrificed himself, and then we play as Cal Kestis in the Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor game, and no death is recorded for him either at this time. Then we have Taron Malicos, again seen in Jedi Fallen Order. Not much is really known about this character. We have a couple comic material to kind of go off of, but again, that stuff's just really hard to say it's established because they're always retconning it. But we do know in the Fallen Order game that he fought against his clones who managed to kill them and survive, and he escaped Dathomir, but was kind of overtaken by the dark side, and did eventually get slain at the hands of Cal Kestis in 14 BBY.
And then obviously Yoda did survive Order 66. We see this in Revenge of the Sith when he makes his escape. We see he later dies in Dagobah in 4 ABY.
Next up, we have Quinlan Vos. So Quinlan Vos is one of those weird characters that we didn't really know survived or not. In Legends, he did, and then in canon, he did for a little bit, and then he didn't. But then it was kind of confirmed once we got to the Kenobi series, and we see Kenobi trying to escape through the path, which is like a hidden pathway for Force-sensitive people trying to escape the Inquisitors and the Empire. And he sees one of the people who had been on the path was Quinlan Vos. Whether he's still alive or not, we have no clue, but we do know at the very least he did survive the events of Order 66, and who knows, he could still be alive in the events of Ahsoka and the Mandalorian, right?
And then another obvious one that survived is Ahsoka Tano. We see her in the Clone Wars survive Order 66 directly, and then we see her in a whole bunch of media later on. Rebels, obviously her own Ahsoka show, The Mandalorian. So we're still getting content about her, and she's yet to die as far as we're aware.
while she might not have been a Jedi, she still would have been hunted by the clones. And as we see, she did get hunted by the clones in the Order 66 scene. So I know some people are going to say, oh, she wasn't a Jedi. Well, she still did survive Order 66, and she's a former Jedi. Next up, we have Baylan Skoll, and I'm going to just throw Shin Hati in there because I'm not too sure when in the canon universe she became a Force wielder. I don't know if she was a former Jedi as well as Baylan Skoll, but we know for sure Baylan Skoll was a former Jedi Knight, and he did at least survive Order 66. He's now a mercenary. He's still alive as far as we know, at least in the Ahsoka events. Next up, we have Oppo Rancisis. Oppo Rancisis is one of those characters that we've only seen in the first two movies, and we don't see at all in the third movie, Revenge of the Sith. So kind of like Quinlan Voss, we have no idea if he survived or died. And this one, I'm going to break the rules just because he's a cool character. In the comics, he is seen as being a Jedi that the Inquisitors are hunting down, as well as Eth Koth at the time. But we can also just assume that he survived because we didn't see him at all, Revenge of the Sith, or his death or anything like that. So this is one of the ones I'm going to break the rule and say the comics do apply.
And then obviously Reva Sevender, she had survived Order 66, obviously, because she ended up turning to the dark side, becoming an Inquisitor, as we see in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. And at the moment, we do not have an on-screen death for her.
This one's a little bit of a weird one. I just threw this on there just for giggles. Barriss Offee, she was a former Jedi, just similar to Ahsoka. I thought I'd throw her on there because if she had declined to become an Inquisitor in Darkside, she would have been eliminated due to Order 66. But she decided to accept, became an Inquisitor, and so technically survived Order 66. We see all of these events in the Tales of the Empire series, where she was later killed. And by the end, she had kind of redeemed herself and was more a Jedi as her former self. Next up, we have Jocasta Nu. Jocasta Nu is seen many times in the prequels, a couple times in the Clone Wars. This is another one where we're going to kind of break the rule for the comics. This one's a little bit more of a popular comic series and a little bit more of an established one. This one's been around and people reference it in the movies and shows a couple times. She is slain by Darth Vader. She goes back to the Jedi Temple to get some material from the archives, trying to destroy them, just trying to take them away from the Empire. And she does succeed, but she is slain by Darth Vader.
And then we have the Grand Inquisitor, who was a Jedi Temple guard. He did survive Order 66 technically, but he went on to become an Inquisitor. We see him again in the Rebels show, where Kanan does end up killing him in a Star Destroyer blast in 4 BBY.
Then we have Eth Koth. This one is again kind of another comic material, but his character is much more established. I guess when I said these characters, we're not going to reference the comics, we're not going to reference comic characters because those characters could easily become irrelevant. We're going to reference characters that we know are established on screen, and we don't have confirmed deaths, but we kind of see them in the comics. We're going to say that's how their story played out. Characters that are only established in books and comics, we're just not going to reference that. Eth Koth, he has a whole comic strip kind of lined up for him. 13th Sister and the Darth Vader, and I think the 5th brother pretty much hunt down Eth Koth. He did survive Order 66. He does kind of give up the mantle of being a Jedi and just kind of turns to religion in the Star Wars universe. But he is later slain by Vader in 14 BBY.
And then obviously Lynn Rakish, who was a former Jedi, turns to be an Inquisitor as well as some of these other Jedi. We do not directly see her death on screen, but a Rebel officer is seen using her, wearing her armor as a disguise. Cere Junda, who was a former Jedi, as seen in the games Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, did also survive Order 66. She ends up having a weird relationship with the Force in these games, but does end up dying at the hand of Darth Vader in 9 BBY.
Then we have Eno Cordova. He was actually thought to be dead by the times of Jedi Fallen Order, but as we get to the events of Jedi Survivor, he's actually alive. So he survived Order 66, but he does die in 9 BBY as well to the hands of Bode. And then lastly, we have Trilla, the apprentice of Cere Junda. She dies in 14 BBY at the hands of Darth Vader. She was also a Jedi turned Inquisitor, but she technically did survive the events of Order 66. And then another character we obviously know about but don't know anything about is the Jedi that we see in Skeleton Crew, Jude Laws. He's the actor who plays this character. He's obviously a Jedi, and He obviously survived Order 66, but that is about all we know about this character. Some miscellaneous characters that we kind of have that technically maybe survived Order 66 for a period of time are the younglings that we see in Jedi Fallen Order that were with Cere Junda and Trilla. We don't know anything about them, but they, at least for a period of time, survived Order 66. Then we have the Jedis that we see in Tales of the Empire that Barriss Offee is hunting down with the Fourth Sister. We don't know how far along the timeline we are, but we do know that they're Force sensitive / Jedi, and that they survived Order 66 to a certain degree. And then lastly, we have the unnamed character who's at least Force sensitive, possibly Jedi, in the Kenobi series that we see Reva kill, or the Inquisitors kill at the beginning of the Kenobi series. So there you guys have it. That's a lot of the characters that I could find. There's some characters that are in Legends and some characters in the comics that we could have put on this list. But again, we wanted to put things that were just more established that we could trust. And a couple of the last ones, especially ones that are comic oriented, it's pretty easily could be changed by Star Wars just in a show or a movie. If they just brought them on screen, it could change everything. But these are characters that are established in the movies and shows, so we can trust that their fates in the comics and the books are established. So let us know in the comments if we missed one. I'm sure we did. Let us know which one of all of these Jedi is your favorite. Personally, I think Taron Malicos is really, really cool. He descends into pretty much insanity by himself because he doesn't really know what's going on. I mean, most of these Jedi had other people to fall on, rely on. And so Taron Malicos was pretty much by himself, ascended into insanity. A very cool perspective of the surviving of Order 66 from another bad guy, you could say. So with that, if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. If you guys are listening on podcasts, don't forget to hit that follow and download, and we will see you guys in the next video.
Peace.